All right, welcome to another series of the Brown Paper Bag. I am with your co-host, Cola.
And I'm with the host himself, Mr. Brandon Lewis.
And today we are honored, privileged to have Dr. Brian Williams here with us, director of the Crim Center. You have many names. I think you also go by Dr. Science.
At times.
You also go by husband and dad and so forth. So we're very honored to have you here with us, and we're going to discuss just some of the different work that you do, that you're involved in, what got you here. Messages that you have for students, for pre-service teachers, things of that nature. And so hopefully we can get as much as we can from you in a short amount of time frame, because I know you have so much to say, particularly in terms of anything dealing with education.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to start off with Cola. I believe he has the first question.
Yes, I do. So just off the introduction, you can tell you do so many different things, and you're known in many different areas. So I would like to ask you, who are you, what do you do, and what has led you to the point in which you're at now?
So you used to start simple with a softball question there. Okay, Brian Williams, name, but in terms of the work that I do, it's pretty broad, but it has one central focus. And at the end of the day, my job is to create opportunities for our children, regardless of gender, race, class, culture, language that they speak, whether they're a U.S. citizen or not. I want to see a world where our children have the opportunity to live up to their fullest potential. And right now, we're not doing a very good job of that. In fact, there are plenty of our children who, for reasons that we have, as a community, agreed on, many of us have agreed on, don't have the same opportunities as their peers because of the color of their skin, because of the language that they speak, because of their sexual orientation, because of their gender. In some ways, are being cut out from their own futures. And so the work that I do, regardless of it being here at the Crim Center or on a Sunday morning at the Children's Museum, or as a professor, working with teachers here at Georgia State, the central focus is to create opportunities for our children.
Can you tell us about some of the work that you're doing currently with the Crim Center? You spoke with the Alonzo A. Crim Center, and I think that a lot of our listeners and viewers may not understand or have knowledge about what that is. So maybe give us a little history on Alonzo A. Crim, and then sort of looking at your vision, your goal, and what you're sort of operating now.
It's important before we talk about, and you said it before you talk about the what, that we talk about the who of Dr. Crim. Dr. Crim came to Atlanta Public Schools in 1973. He was brought here by the city council, by the school board. The school board chair at the time was Dr. Benjamin E. Mays, the former president of Morehouse College, educator, scholar, mentee to Dr. Martin Luther King. And so in many ways you see some alignment in the principles and philosophies of Dr. King and Dr. Crim. So Dr. Crim was brought here to, one, turn around our schools, but also to desegregate the schools. So remember, the Brown versus Board of Education decision happened in the 1950s, but still in the 1970s, many schools in the Southeast were still segregated.
Exactly.
And so this is part of what they call the Atlanta Compromise. I don't know how much of a compromise it was, but the idea was that certain schools will remain unsegregated. They will remain segregated.
Right. All deliberate speed and all of that.
Yeah, right. So we would have some schools that would just stay white, segregated schools. But in exchange for those schools, we would bring in black leadership for the school system, a black superintendent. And that was Alonzo Crim. And he was the first black person to lead a major school district in the South after the Brown decision. So this is a historic space and historic person. The other thing about Dr. Crim was the way that he thought about educational turnaround or transformation. How do we create effective schools? So the story I like to tell is there are children that will go to school today, or in the wintertime will go to school and they will be cold, they will be hungry, they will be coming from communities where there is evidence of crime, drug abuse. There may be evidence of mental illness in their communities. They may be living with parents who are suffering from mental illness. Their parents may be working 2 or 3 jobs because they are dealing with poverty. So these are the children that are going to many of the schools in urban communities, and many of the schools in Atlanta when Dr. Crim arrived. Dr. Crim understood that we're going to fix education for these children. It can't just be about what happens in the classroom with our teachers. because our teachers aren't trained to address public health issues, mental health, poverty, housing. So Dr. Krim brought these other groups to the table. So he spoke with the police. He spoke with the Atlanta Housing Authority. He spoke with the CDC. He brought these people to the table to begin to come up with strategies for transforming our schools that really leveraged collective impact, us working together, as opposed to just putting it all on the teachers, all on the principals, all on the kids and the parents, which is what we tend to do today. This group of people, Dr. Krim called the community of believers. And it was through the community of believers that Dr. Krim actually transformed Atlanta Public Schools and put us on the map as a city that valued education, but also knew how to do public education well.
Tell me about some programs that you have going on currently with the Krim Center.
The Krim Center.
Right.
We work based on Dr. Krim's vision for school transformation and system transformation and the community of believers. That's the way we think about everything. So that means that our partnerships and the people that we work with tend to be different than what you would see in a typical Center for Education or Urban Education, right? You typically think we'd be partnering with a lot of schools and doing a lot of teacher professional development. We do that work, definitely. But we just finished working with the Atlanta Police Department because the police came to us and they said, look, when it comes to youth crime, we realize that we can arrest our way out of the problem. Which, my mouth just hit, jaw hit the ground because you don't expect the police to be saying these things, but they were, they were being very honest that this is a problem that they were really struggling with and they didn't have the tools to solve it. And so the Krim Center worked with them over the course of about a year to begin figuring out how do we develop some other tools for the police. And so right now they're developing a diversion program, a pre-arrest diversion program. In other words, you get pulled over by the cops, that the police then have the ability to say, instead of sending you to the courts, we're going to send you to a program to get you back on track. So that this child will never have a record. They never have to go in front of a judge. And that's pretty powerful for the police to be doing that. And so the Krim Center was a part of making that work happen.
Wow.
We also work with the Atlanta Housing Authority because we understand that children need access to quality housing. So you know that right around the Olympics in 1996, AHA made the decision to begin tearing down the publicly funded housing projects in the city of Atlanta. I was at Georgia Tech at the time.
Yeah.
I was actually working at Fowler Elementary School, which was in the Techwood Homes right across from Tech. And that was one of the first housing projects to go.
Wow.
And the reason that they were doing that is because they felt like concentrated poverty was a barrier for people in terms of moving their lives forward. And so instead of having these housing projects where just basically poor people living together, they began to build mixed income communities where people from different income brackets were all living together. So you've got people now that are on Section 8 housing, or they're called housing choice people. They get housing choice vouchers now, living across the city of Atlanta. But we wanted to support them. We wanted to figure out ways to continue to support them as they move into these new communities. So we do classes for housing choice participants around things like home ownership, financial literacy, what else? We do things on pathways to success around getting your GED, but anything that we feel will help them move their lives forward. On Saturdays, anybody that has a housing choice voucher must come up here to Georgia State and take our classes. So it's another way that we're kind of contributing to creating healthy communities. And our belief is programs like the program with the police and the program with the housing authority will ultimately create communities where children are better positioned to take advantage of great teachers that we have in the classroom. Because if you just have the great teachers and you're not doing all this other stuff as well, then you're really not going to win this battle.
I know that you offer access to a lot of individuals that may have great work that they're doing, and you offer them spaces to share that work. And I know that I believe it's called the Sources Conference. Right. You also offer the Benjamin E. Mays Lecture. These are once a year, but I wanted to see if you can just kind of speak on those two events that happen, so therefore people will know about them. Maybe come out and check out the work you're doing.
Dr. Krim believed when he was here, because he actually left the school system in 1988. He came to Georgia State and attempted to be a professor here at Georgia State. He was good at it. But one of the things I think that Dr. Krim really wanted in terms of the academy was a stronger connection with the community. I don't think he would have ever been that professor to sit behind his desk and churn out papers and never go into a school. And so while he was here, he raised a great deal of money for an endowed chair for a professor that would kind of be a connection between the university and the community. It's the Benjamin E. Mays Chair for, I think, urban education, I think is what it is. Today it's Joyce King. Lisa Delpit was also a Mays Chair, and she's actually the person that opened the Krem Center. So the Krem Center kind of comes from that same philosophy of we need to be a connecting point between the university and the academy and all the great things that are going on at Georgia State. There are a lot of good things going on, but those good things must be applied to our local communities. We must have an impact on the schools and communities that are right in our neighborhood. We have to, or we can't really say we're a premier university.